Good morning, everyone. I'd like to share a concept about fear, especially in this climate of this pandemic. A concept that's been very helpful for me. I first received this from the Lord in 1980. I was going through a year-long, 13-month-long battle with fear, panic attacks, depression, doubts, things I'd never experienced before at that level. And when I cried out to the Lord and asked Him to help me and to teach me so I could teach others, this is one of the concepts that He gave me many years ago. But I had to apply it all again just this past week. I was in another country doing a mission trip, and we got a phone call one morning saying that all the domestic flights were being canceled on the day that I was to leave the country. And it set in motion all kinds of feelings, all kinds of fears of how I would get out of the country. What would I do? What if? And it was a real battle. And when I would think about myself getting out of the country, being born out on eagle's wings and being on the plane and being home, reunited with my family, my church, I'd have peace. And but it was a real seesaw battle. And so it just made me realize afresh just how pertinent this concept is. This concept helped me to win the battle. Help me to come home in peace, help me to, in the end, be able to believe for a complete return home. And so I think this would be helpful for you. This would be a really good concept to ingest in some way that you can share it with your children. And I know a lot of kids have panic attacks and have fears and powerful imaginations, and this will be helpful for them. And so this is called the cycle of fear, and so it really is a cycle. And all fear begins with a thought or an idea. It's not a random thing. It's not just something that happens. It all begins with an idea. And this idea, when we project it on the future, we have this powerful tool called meditation where you can actually make movies and you start thinking about what's going to happen in the future. And if it's something that's true, the idea is true, it'll produce peace every time. If it's a lie, it'll always produce fear every time. And I don't know of any exceptions to this. And of course, these, both fear and peace, can be in different volumes, really loud, really intense, or mild. And so these can be experienced in volume. So the thought, when you mix it with faith, and it doesn't matter whether it's peace or fear, it will not work. It will not have a reaction unless we mix it with faith. And everybody has faith. God's made us all with a seed of faith. And so we have this process that we go through where we have a thought and we believe it, and it creates a feeling. And if it's peace, it's wonderful. If it's fear, you get chills. You get your heart rate goes up. You can actually experience all the symptoms of a heart attack. What happens is your breathing changes, and you start breathing shallow, and then your muscles start crying for oxygen. That creates pain, which can simulate a heart attack, create lower back pain, create headaches, and with this, it affects your digestive system. And it also creates cloudy thinking. I'm not sure why it does that exactly, but it makes it very hard to make decisions. You start shutting down, cloudy thinking. So these are some of the physical things that happen when we have a thought that's a negative, it's a lie, we believe it, and fear kicks in. Now, what the psalmist taught that's so profound is you can reverse this. So you have a thought that's a negative, say it's a thought you're going to be harmed, and then you believe it, and you start feeling some degree of fear Well, the psalmist, David, he said, what time I'm afraid, I will trust in you. So he would actually reverse it, trusting. Of course, that's a form of faith, trusting, and then you go back to how big God is, how much he cares, how much he loves us, and it reverses this whole process. Now, Jesus demonstrated this when the disciples were in a boat. They had a thought that they were seeing a ghost. Maybe they heard fishing stories about fishermen who died on the Sea of Galilee. Anyway, they thought they saw a ghost, and so they believed it, and that created panic, actually quite a high level of fear. They were screaming. Jesus tries to reverse this by saying, fear not. So there's a part where we can control this. He wouldn't have said that unless we could do something about it. So he said, fear not, be of good cheer, it is I. So when he said it's I, he's producing a truth that they can actually sink their faith into. And he's trying to reverse their panic. And Peter, he experienced the same thing when he was sinking, and Jesus tries to reverse this. And so what I found on this trip is when I had thoughts of not getting out of the country and thinking of what I would have to do to get across the country and how I'd manage this and the people I'd inconvenience and that may not be able to catch my international flight home. This thought would, when I believed it, would create levels of fear and all these kinds of symptoms here. And when I would, by faith, say, no, the Lord cares, the Lord sees me, and I could picture myself, through the power of meditation, picture myself actually on the plane, safe and sound, on my way home, being reunited with my loved ones, my church, it would produce peace. And I would have this pocket of peace, and all this stuff would settle down. Then I'd have another thought, another what if, and next thing you know, it's creating all this cycle of fear. And what happens is when these thoughts kick in, and you believe it, and it produces these feelings, something happens where next thing you know, you get another negative thought. And if this cycle happens repeatedly, and it actually can get out of control, so it creates a panic attack where it just spins. It just spins out of control. And one thought on top of the other, and then next thing you know, you're confused, you don't know what to do. When you worship in the middle of this, you're doing it by faith, you're thinking on the Lord, how big he is, you're singing about how great he is, how much he cares, and it can actually reverse this and kind of get this here to settle down. But you don't want this to get to this point. You don't want to get the loud volume, you don't want to get all this. So what time I'm afraid, once you start feeling it, you use fear as a reminder that you need to reset your faith, redirect your faith. It's interesting, this whole thing with faith, the disciples, when they're in the boat, Jesus is sleeping on the back of the boat on a pillow, and he's sleeping back there because he's in peace. He's trusting the Father. He's got a purpose for him, and he loves him, and so he's able to sleep during the storm. The disciples came and they said, Lord, don't you care that we're perishing? So they had a movie going. They had a thought. And the thought was that they believed was that they were perishing. That was a lie. That wasn't true. That wasn't going to happen. And the second lie was that he doesn't care. When you're afraid, if you go back to your thoughts, and you could do this even a year later, you can go back to your thought and look for the lie. Look for the thing that you're believing that isn't true, that you're supposing or presuming, and replace it with something that is true, like a promise from God. Well, they believed the lie that Jesus didn't care. And so Jesus gets up, he rebukes the wind, he rebukes the waves, and he asks them a profound question. He said, where is your faith? That's fascinating. Where is your faith? He's actually saying you have faith, and everybody has faith, whether they're in fear or peace. They have faith. It's just misdirected. And almost every fear, we could probably say every fear, is misdirected faith. And if you can just change it, just change the direction, say God cares, he's so big, he's so mighty, he sees me, his eyes on the sparrow, he sees me. And you can actually redirect your faith and produce a different kind of movie, a different kind of outcome. This movie making is something that we all come with. We're created in the image of God, and it's called meditation. So Paul writes to the Philippians, and he says, meditate or think on the things that are true. And it produces peace. And so I had this battle. It was all fresh. It wasn't something that happened in 1980. This is something that happened to me last week. I'm hoping that this will be helpful for you. It'll help you to get a handle on your own fears. Watch what you project on the future. Try to live in the now. Try to live in trust in the Lord, worshiping Him, believing Him to help us through this, so that your financial picture will be entirely different at the end of the year than what it looks like right now. Hope this is helpful. God bless you.